And welcome to EDUCA Radio. I'm
Ready for takeoff.
Welcome to the #1 educational program in Colorado. We're more than radio. We're EDUCA Radio. Our goal is to outreach and engage parents to support public education and improve the quality of life in our community. Our children's future, our community's future, is in our hands. Live from Denver, Colorado, this is EDUCA Radio. Ready for takeoff? In 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon. I'm so glad it's Friday. Welcome to EDUCA Radio. I'm your host today, Leslie Janelle. And as with every Friday, we're live on EDUCA Radio with great informative content. This time I am so excited to welcome Janet Damon, who's with our Library Services team. Library Services provides access to thousands of books, ebooks, and digital resources for research and deep inquiry. I'm not sure if you knew this, but our school libraries and ebook collections circulated 672,000 books this year, and we're on track to put over 1 million books and ebooks in the hands of our students this coming fall. As African Americans, we possess an incredible legacy of writers, storytellers, journalists, poets, and historians. School libraries help provide access to these culturally responsive stories and bring us closer to show us the power of the human spirit. Libraries encourage every child to become curious, self-motivated readers, offering the tools and resources to reconnect us to our history, our culture, and the amazing ancestors who came before us. So again, I want to welcome Janet to the conversation. This is really something that I've been excited about. I've heard bits and pieces of the work that you're doing, and we even have some plans to do some work together in the fall.
Very exciting.
But really want to educate our listeners today about the resources that are available. How do they access those resources? How do they as parents also have connection to the works that are available to them? So you know, the first question, just tell us a little bit about yourself, Janet, and how long you've been with DPS and how you got to this role.
All right. Well, I'm excited that I've been with DPS for a long time. I'm a graduate of Denver Public Schools. And actually, I started in libraries when I was 15 and a half. It was my first job at the Central Branch Library. I was a shelver and kind of worked my way up. And then my family moved to Montbello, so I worked at the Montbello Branch Library, building community, getting to know all of my neighbors and the children. And it kind of led me on a journey to really wanting to do this work. Also because I have a personal story around libraries. My father was in the military. We lived abroad and we traveled a lot. And every 3 years in the military, you have to move. So you have to leave behind all your friends, your school, all the relationships that you have built, and you move to a new place. And so when we would move to these new places, my dad would get us settled in our new kind of like transitional hotel that we were staying at till we got housing. And then he would take me to go find the library. And he would register me for a library card. And then he would show me on a map how to walk to the library by myself. And every day I would start this journey to the library, and I would read and develop a relationship with a librarian. And it really helped to center and ground me as a learner. And so that's the kind of safe spaces that I want to create for students as a librarian. And so that kind of led me on a path after college to come to DPS and to work at Ashley Elementary, East High School, Oakland Elementary, John M. Mess. I also taught history and literacy intervention work at Knoll campus. And so just always love serving my community in this way as a librarian.
Well, you really drive home the importance of parents and families really rooting through their actions, their demonstration of commitment about how important it is for that literacy piece.
Yes, right? and we know that's where it starts. So when we think about, there's this really amazing informative piece around when our people, when African Americans were liberated and came out of slavery, the literacy rate within like 5 years had already increased to like 40%. And that is because just in that rapid time, families were so committed to this as the height of justice, that this is the work that they were seeking to ensure that they had access to literacy. And so there is a narrative in our community, and families really dig in around this to say, we love books, we love knowing our history, we love learning our culture, and that access point is a simple story, a simple book. My father did something else that I think is powerful, and I see other families do it. Every summer, when summer break and vacation would start, my dad would ask me, so what are you curious about? And I would tell him, maybe it was insects, maybe it was animals. And my dad would say, okay, this is going to be what you're going to research. Show me an outline, show me a plan. And my father right there was giving me a learning agenda and allowing me to have ownership of that learning agenda. And so he would touch base with me and check in, and he'd ask me, what are you learning about this? And at the end of the summer, I would do this great presentation of learning to him. And then he would take us out to a restaurant and sit. And my dad really loved and believed in curiosity. And he's the first librarian in my life because he taught me research. And so our families are transformational. They are the point of impact. And the more resources we have with our families, the more they will empower their students.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an education walk.
Yes.
Right. It's a journey, because you mentioned something very powerful in that the increased literacy rate right after enslavement ended. And what do you think happened to that urgency, to that drive, that desire? I tell my grandkids often, there was a time when your ancestors could not learn to read. And so how do we drive that message home to our young people and even our parents, our families, that this is so critical? This literacy piece is really the springboard to everything that a student is going to do academically.
Yes. And when you ask that, you get to the heart and soul of the question, right? And that is one, when you think about, so for example, I've been in a time where I've been able to listen to a lot of families and a lot of parents, and honestly a lot of my elders. And so when I listen and we have a conversation around what it looked like to be raised during the time of segregation, what it looked like to be raised when there were barriers to access. And around that time, I'll say, man, that must have been a very challenging time. And they'll put their hand out and they'll pause me and they'll say, but my community, the teachers in my community, the people in my community, there is an empowerment, there's an affirmation of who we are, and that piece of it, that finding your home and your center of gravity in your community, in your family, in the affirming beliefs and the enabling beliefs that we have about one another, that we know. I also think that there's some power to say that the most brilliant among us fought for the access to be the pioneers who founded HBCUs, who went to college, and they came back to their community and said, I'm bringing back to you the best of what I've learned. The most passionate educators came back, and that's just a powerful piece of that story, that who raised this generation that we have of our elders who kicked down doorways, who were passionate and committed and walked a very hard road. And now we see this generation, where is the connection to ensure they have those affirming and enabling stories, that they know the narrative and they know their place in that narrative to work hard, move forward, and to also come back and give back to your community.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of rich history there, and you mentioned this word affirmation, and how do we affirm? And so I'm sure you have tons of stories that you could share with us today about the impacts that you've seen this access to literacy, this access to libraries have on families and students. Yes. Anyone in particular that stands out to you?
Oh, there's so many. I think about what I find is that whenever I ask a reader or someone who's really passionate about libraries, what's your own testimony as a reader? I find that there are powerful stories that they will tell me. Just like my story of moving constantly and having to have a library as a safe home and these stories to ground me. Jonathan McMillan, he has a powerful story around this, and he actually does a lot of work in the community. And I won't ever forget a day when we sat down to collaborate around a summer literacy project with Troy Grimes, Jonathan McMillan, to talk about how Project Proud Fatherhood could support this work. And Jonathan said, you know, I grew up there in Park Hill, and Pauline Robinson was there, the library, and my mom said, hey, you know, this is dangerous stuff is happening. I want to make sure that you are safe, so I'm going to drop you at the library, and that's where you're going to stay. You're going to read. And so he said he would get there, and he would get a book, read a book, and then go outside and ride his bike, and then go back in, read a book, and then come back outside and play football, and then go back inside and read a book. And he loved it. It was the best time. But then later on, there were some choices that he made, some things that happened. This is the time when gang violence, like, you know, there was a lot of things that happened there. And so he said, you know, he ended up incarcerated. And the place he worked was in the prison library. And he helped the other folks who were there, and he offered books and recommendations, and he realized this is a pathway for me. And so now in his work around, you know, ensuring young men and young women make choices, he tells that story, and that's a powerful testimony.
Yeah, I know Jonathan. Yes. I know his mother, Judy, and his father, Charles. His sister is my god sister, actually. So I've known them for a long time and know his story, and he's just done phenomenal things. And I think that part is new to me, and so I think him being able to share that with young people is so powerful.
It is.
We have a lot more to talk about, but just what you rooted for us in this initial opening of the conversation. But we're going to come right back after this break on EDUCA Radio. Don't go away.
Learn what you love what you learn. Graduate debt-free from a certified program in health science, design, trades, or administration in less than a year. Opportunity comes from possibility. Come see what's possible.
So I was a recreation and tourism major at Missouri State University. After college, I moved to Hilton Head, South Carolina, where I did an internship, and it was more in the hospitality realm of things. So I started working in resorts. I worked for 6 resorts in Hilton Head, where I began my hospitality career. So first and foremost, you get to meet a lot of great people. I mean, you get to see people from all walks of life, from all cultures, from all countries, and you do get to know them, you know, on more of a personal level as a concierge, especially because you're helping them plan activities and plan daily to-dos. So you get to know like what their likes are, what their dislikes are. So I think that's, you know, super awesome. I think the 3 main skills and components that I'd like to kind of transition in the hospitality are communication, both verbal and written. I think that's primarily going to be the most important skill that anybody learns in hospitality, is how to communicate with others. So there's everything from, you know, concierge, bellman, valet, front desk agents, catering and sales, and that's just in the hospital or in the hotel industry alone. You know, there's everything in restaurants as well. So bartenders, servers, hostesses, general managers. You know, I think there's just a wide array of positions available. I'm excited about the program, and I think that's the most important thing. I'm truly excited to start it and excited to see how it evolves and rolls out. And, you know, it's going to be a growing process, so we're excited to see, you know, what we can gain from it and what kind of sponsors we can, you know, match up with, what kind of places we can go tour, but I think it provides a lot of opportunity for students and for adult learners alike. I think that it will be a great kind of jumping off point for the hospitality industry and to become a hospitality professional.
Learn what you love what you learn. Graduate debt-free from a certified program in health science, design, trades, or administration in less than a year. Opportunity comes from possibility. Come see what's possible.
Welcome back to EDUCA Radio. Again, I'm your host, Leslie Janelle, and I am honored to be here with Janet Damon, who is from our library services here in DPS. If you'd like to send a text message to us, please do so at 720-961-3775. Again, any questions or comments that you have, if you'd like to engage in this this conversation that's happening. So again, we're back with Janet Damon, and you know, Janet, that was a good segment, just talking about what really inspired you to go into library services. And I think about my own grandkids, and we purposely, intentionally look for books with young people on them that look like them.
Yes.
And so, you know, who are some of the authors and books that you think every family should have in their library at home?
Well, first I'm going to talk a little bit about, you know, what you're looking for when you pick books with your grandson are those mirror books. Books that shine back to us an affirming belief about ourselves. And one of the most affirming authors I find is Jacqueline Woodson. You can see yourself in her stories, and there's a powerful piece where you see a beautiful love for yourself. Trish Cook is another author who is promoted books that empower families and shine a light on the beautiful, intimate moments of love between grandparents and grandchildren. In fact, one of my favorite books to read to my children were books like Grandparents' Song, where grandfathers were taking children fishing and taking them outdoors. And those are the kind of stories where students get to see their families. But also they're books that are window books, books that help us to see the world outside of our own. And this is important because as we're reading, there's something happening in our brain where your brain is kind of saying, oh, are we about to have an experience? And then it's releasing these neurotransmitters that help a student feel like they are having this experience. And so one of the books I think of is Jacqueline Woodson writes this book, The Day I Begin. And in this story, and I literally, I'm going to share a little story about this because I felt this way just the other day. In the story, a little girl is, you know, she's having these experiences where she comes into spaces and she doesn't always feel like she's welcome or that she's seen. And so in the book, the author is saying, there is this moment where you will feel like this. You will be in a space where you may feel unwelcome, where you may feel in a space where you might feel unsure of yourself. But this is the day you begin to tell your story, to move forward in your power. And the girl starts to talk about, you know, it's that moment in class where they say, what did you do this summer? And some kids say, oh, I went around the world. I went to Germany and Paris. I went on an airplane here. And the little girl says, I went all over the world through my stories, through my books, and I experienced all these things. And someone in the class who also felt like they were not being seen saw her do that and became brave and shared their story. So when we think about that, books play a powerful role in helping us to connect to a human experience that we all share. Now we also have sliding doors, stories that take us and make us feel like we're totally in another world. And I think about my own recent experience reading Children of Blood and Bone, written by Tomi Adeyemi, and is going to be a movie. And here is a young woman at 22, 23, she wrote this book. It is being called the Nigerian Harry Potter. It's an epic tale, and right out of the gate, it started a bidding war in the publishing houses, and she secured a 7-figure deal for her first book, and the second one will release this summer, Children of Virtue and Vengeance. It is very exciting to be in this time now where you have authors who are writing incredible stories rooted in our lived experience, but also with the futurism. And so I just think it's a great time to have those books and also to develop reader identity. So we want every reader to feel empowered to choose what makes them feel the most excited about reading, so that we're not always saying, I want you to check off this list of all these books, but we're actually asking them, what is it that you're curious about? And that students can name it and own it and seek it out and feel affirmed and positive about the choices they're making around their reading.
Yeah. So, you know, you brought up a good point about the neurology of the brain and how reading has an impact on that. And I'm learning a lot more about that. But that's a powerful story within itself.
It is.
Is the neurobiology part of it. Right. And so what do you say to people like me who say, but I really don't like to read? I can listen to an audiobook, like my Audible is full of books that I haven't even listened to. But families, in terms of getting access to the books, what's the current state of access to books?
Okay.
These books that you're talking about.
Yes.
How do we make sure that those are in classrooms?
Right.
That teachers know in a culturally responsive way that these materials are there with some context about why they're so important and the impact they can have?
Leslie, that is an amazing question. And you hit on three important pieces. One is the neurochemistry of reading, that a shared experience. So when we talk with parents who have elementary and younger children, we really stress the importance of reading together, because there's something that happens when you are close to someone and you're reading with them. The first thing is the oxytocin releases, because they're spending time with someone they love. There's a gentleness involved. And so then as you get to reading the story, you're asking questions, they're responding, and now that bonding that neurotransmitter is connecting new information to joy. And we know when we create a pathway from reading, the actual act of reading, to the stories we read, to the people we read with, we have strengthened that neural pathway. And now whenever a child sees a book, they will respond with joy, because they will say, this is going to be a great experience like the one I have with my family member. The next piece is, you mentioned audiobooks. Whether you read through audiobooks or in print, you are a reader.
So I'm good.
You are great.
Okay,
and in fact, audiobooks play a powerful role, one, because they're anytime books. You can play it when you are doing something else. You can just listen to it. You're engaging in that story, and your brain is still richly connecting this new story with other pathways, and you are having an experience, right? The other piece to that is that it models fluency in language for our youngest readers. So for them, they get to hear what that language sounds like, what those unfamiliar words sound like, and they get to enjoy and have access points to literacy that are at this level beyond just their own instructional reading level, but that is pushing them, and they're increasing their desire to read. And then the last piece is, how do we get access to these books? For some people, it's going to the library. It's a habit they do. Maybe on the weekend, they pop in and they browse. And I will say there's this magic of stumbling across a book you might not have chosen had you not seen it, or a new book. But then the other piece is that some of our families, they're busy. They are working, they're busy, but they want their children to ensure that their children have access to these stories. And for that, we have digital resources. We have a website, lion.dpsk12.org, and you are one click away. Every child in DPS has access to this, who are 5 books, and then our teachers have access to 15. So it is great for getting books around professional growth and development. And for our families, it's a great time to see what your child likes to read, to browse through the collections. What I'm most proud about is that at DPS libraries, we've curated collections so that we actually have Black Boy Joy. We have a collection of books that are the 1,000 Black Girl books, and that's a list that Marley Diaz, who didn't see herself in books, created a hashtag and a social media campaign, and now that list has grown to 12,000 books, and we've curated as many as we can into that collection, so families don't always have to know the author, don't always have to know the story. They can click on collections and they can just browse through. We have books in Arabic. We know that when we look at our students, that they come from many different places, many different countries, and sometimes, a teacher might, upon glance, think, oh, this book, and they say, I need a book that's going to be in my native language, and so books in Arabic. We have collections of books that are scary stories, that are funny, that are magic stories, and so that's when that piece of reader identity and access come together, and now the student is equipped that when summer comes and the school doors close, that doesn't mean access stops. One of our schools, the students read 12,000 books over the summer. And so that's the power of access and having digital tools. And this is an app. It can be put on the phone. You can play a story on your drive. Let's say you know that you have to go downtown. And that creates a conversation around that story and how decisions were made in that story. And family, your values as a family and how you might do things differently or the same. And those conversations are rich, and all of it connects the new learning to the prior knowledge. And now we have created the synapse that's connecting, and that's an experience that's positive for the student.
That's great. So a couple of things. One, you said that this is a digital, and it's accessible.
Yes.
For free.
For free.
Okay, so everyone doesn't have to go out and buy Audible.
Right.
Like I do every month.
It's audiobooks and ebooks. Yes.
So so I'm gonna be transitioning. I'm gonna transition to that. Also, I think something that you said is really important. It's not only about our students having access and families having access to these resources and the materials, but this can spark authors.
Yes.
How many of our students,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Read these books, whether they're mirror books or sliding doors. I love that.
Yes.
I love that. And then decide, I too want to be an author. Right? That is powerful.
And that's what we need. Right now, we are at a state in children's publishing. They have started to really do an audit of what has come out for children. And so out of 100 books that are published for children in a given year, when we looked at that, students who are African American, we may see ourselves only in 11 of those books as a central character. And then when we get into our Latinx students, 2%. And for our Native American students and our First Nation students, less than 1%. So we need to disrupt this by cultivating authors within our community. And we know this is powerful. I think of how many self-published authors that I purchase. I mean, I buy books whenever I see someone kind of going out to share that story. And it's a powerful shift.
Yeah. Well, we have just a few minutes left in this segment, but when we come back on the other side, I really would love for you to just reiterate that website and some of those resources that are available there, particularly around what happens in the summer. We're getting ready to come up on summer. So we want to make sure that our students still have access to reading over the summer. So again, we are so glad that you are here with us. You show such passion for the work that you do. And for our listeners, again, if you want to send us a text or send us a comment about this powerful show, please do so at 720-961-3775. You're listening to More Than Radio, EDUCA Radio. Join us. Please don't go away. Thank you.
Learn what you love what you learn. Graduate debt-free from a certified program in health science, design, trades, or administration in less than a year. Opportunity comes from possibility. Come see what's possible.
So I was a recreation and tourism major at Missouri State University. After college, I moved to Hilton Head, South Carolina, where I did an internship, and it was more in the hospitality realm of things. So I started working in resorts. I worked for 6 resorts in Hilton Head, where I began my hospitality career. So first and foremost, you get to meet a lot of great people. I mean, you get to see people from all walks of life, from all cultures, from all countries, and you do get to know them, on more of a personal level as a concierge, especially because you're helping them plan activities and plan daily to-dos. So you get to know what their likes are, what their dislikes are. So I think that's, super awesome. I think the 3 main skills and components that I'd like to kind of transition in the hospitality are communication, both verbal and written. I think that's primarily going to be the most important skill that anybody learns in hospitality, is how to communicate with others. So there's everything from, concierge, bellman, valet, front desk agents, catering and sales, and that's just in the in the hotel industry alone. There's everything in restaurants as well. So bartenders, servers, hostesses, general managers. I think there's just a wide array of positions available. I'm excited about the program, and I think that's the most important thing. I'm truly excited to start it and excited to see how it evolves and rolls out. And it's going to be a growing process, so we're excited to see what we can gain from it and what kind of sponsors we can match up with, what kind of places we can go tour, but I think it provides a lot of opportunity for students and for adult learners alike. I think that it will be a great kind of jumping off point for the hospitality industry and to become a hospitality professional.
Learn what you love what you learn. Graduate debt-free from a certified program in health science, design, trades, or administration in less than a year. Opportunity comes from possibility. Come see what's possible.
Well, we're back. We're back with EDUCA Radio today. Again, thank God it's Friday. and it's the Friday before spring break. You feeling the same way?
I
Janet?
am.
Yes. Again, if you want to join the conversation, please send us a text message to 720-961-3775. And again, excited that Janet Damon is here. She has such passion and information. This 1 hour is not going to be enough. So we just can't contain it. But I would like for you to go back and repeat for us where families can access on the website, and what are some of those resources that they can access around summer reading and prizes, I heard.
Yes.
Okay, tell us about it.
So first I want to remind you that the website you can go to is lion.dpsk12.org. And once you get there, you'll see in the center green box ebooks as well as online databases, which is another wonderful resource. And that's where your student can check out 5 books. I also want to tell you about a website called uniteforliteracy.org. This is a website that translates ebooks for our youngest readers to 42 different languages, including American Sign Language. So if you have a family member or you want just to have that access to those language supports, that is an amazing website to use. And even for our older students who are learning a second language, they can get in there to read and practice and hear with fluency the narration. The other resource that's wonderful for us is that we are hosting an ebook contest that started Monday and will go to the end of next week after spring break is over. And the school that has the most ebook logins per student is going to be able to win for our elementary students a book fair where they will be able to get 6 free books, or for our middle school, high school, a graphic novel collection for their library. And so these are ways that we just want to encourage access and families to use that access. The Summer of Adventure also is posted through the Denver Public Library, where there are prizes and different pathways so that students can do STEM activities, they can read, or they can also just kind of check off a list of some experiences that they have had. So that is another wonderful resource. I also want to say for our African American families, I encourage you to join in with Black Child Development Institute. We have a summer literacy program that I help to partner with through the literacy work, and we do workshops with the fathers as well as provide a storytelling opportunity that are all culturally responsive. We've done Kingdoms of Mali, children have been crowned, there's book giveaways. Cassandra Johnson with BCDI does that work. So in the summer, that's usually in July, you can reach out to join and participate in that as well.
Talk a little bit more about the Father program. I've heard you talk about this before, and we know that the Black Child Development Institute that you've been doing work with, but tell us a little bit more about the opportunity for fathers to get engaged.
Yes. Okay, so one of the things I think is really powerful in this work is that we look at it through this holistic lens of creating this village. And our fathers and the men in our families play such a pivotal and important role. And so with this work, they kicked this off, I think, 3 years ago, and in the last 2 years I've been a part of it. And it's been collaborative with fathers to say, here's the brain science and the neuroscience of what's happening. So we did some 15-minute workshops with dads, and then we sent dads to go and do this work with the children. So they read stories with the children, did crafts and activities with the children, and there is magic when we pair our fathers and uncles and brothers in a position of providing that safe space and that encouragement. I want to say that it's been some of the most beautiful instructional moments that I have seen. The fun and the joy and the excitement and the creativity. Yeah, Black Man Magic is real as well.
I like that.
And so it is, and then just the celebratory atmosphere. Everyone comes together. And during that time when dads are reading with the kids, moms are centering ourselves and we're having wisdom circles. And something I've noticed, and I think you have mentioned this before too, is that how is it intergenerational? And I want to say that Joyce Brooks, she leads some work around Gray Panthers, and she's such a wise woman. We had circles where women came to the circles saying, I don't know how to do this. How do I navigate this space? And when you have an intergenerational circle, our elders come in to the space and lean in with such love and wisdom. And so one mom had shared, I don't feel as confident about my own reading skills. I don't want to read in front of my child. I don't feel comfortable. And Dr. Brooks said something so powerful. She said, when our people came out of enslavement, they did not know how to read, and yet they instilled in us a passion and a desire for lifelong learning. And so the love and support and encouragement and life that you speak into your children, and also, she said, our oral tradition. When you think about, after the invention of the first fire, was the invention of the first story. And that is how knowledge is transmitted in cultures that are collective cultures. And so the power of coming to hear each other's stories, that is something that every mother and father, every parent has the opportunity to provide for their child.
I'm so glad that you clarified with the dads that that means any significant male in that child's life.
Yes.
Whether it's dad, grandfather, great-grandfather, uncle, brother, cousin, neighbor, right? That is so powerful because we tend to really embrace our extended family. That's part of who we are as people, is that we embrace everybody. We call everybody uncle and cousin and friend. And so I'm really, thank you for clarifying that. Also, just want to mention, we've got some great things coming up this fall. So some of what you just heard Janet talk about, we've got that in the works for the fall. So please make sure you stay with us and make sure that you're connected to make sure you can participate. So how have families been able to find out about these things, Janet? But you know, if you weren't here today and our audience may not know this, or if you're not intentionally going to the DPS website of lion.com, how else are we communicating about such powerful information and materials that are accessible to us free?
This right here is part of where I have to own that there is, you know, not every school has a librarian. Not every school has, you know, a pathway for delivering these resources to families. So families do sometimes feel like they are out kind of, you know, trying to navigate this on their own. And I'm so thankful that you have tried to close this gap through the show and bringing this information to families. But when we think about what happens when, you know, we have students who don't have that regular encouragement, that access, that person to say, here's Jason Reynolds' new book. You've got to read this. Here's Angie Thomas's new book. Man, this touched my soul. You know, we need to have those folks. They're disrupting what we really see as a book desert, a lack of access. So, you know, we try our best in library services to come out if you're having a family literacy night. We partner with organizations like BCDI. We really do our best to lean in on educators who are so passionate about this. The pop-up library collection, you know, really going in.
Talk about the pop-up libraries.
So what's exciting about the pop-up libraries, Dr. Karen Powell, who is at Montbello Technical College, she is a passionate reader. And again, she has a story about reading because she is had little brothers and sisters who her mother told her, it's your responsibility to walk them to the library every summer and make sure they read. And now all of them are just amazing in their own right, have all gotten advanced degrees. So she knows the power of that narrative. So when she reached out and said, you know, we don't have a library, what can we do to make sure students have access? I said, well, let's put a library in the back of my car and let's drive it out there to you and let's put it up for the students and see what they say. Students want these books and students will say, I need these stories. And there's a young man out there right now who he tells me different books that I should be reading. There's this book by Jay Prince, who is a producer of albums and so forth, but he wrote a memoir, The Art and Science of Respect. And that book knocked me off of my feet. And it just told the story that is a lived experience of our students, but told it in a way that gave them the plan, the way to become an entrepreneur, the way to become a person grounded in community. So this young man has been teaching me about what it is that we need to have in our collection. CPA, for example, Nina Conley is a passionate educator of color, and she too has received a pop-up library, and days come by and she'll send me a list. 15 more students came and wanted to check out all of these books, and students, they know when they're not getting it. One thing that broke my heart was when Montbello High School Library reopened. That was a great celebration, right? Students hadn't had access in a while, and one young woman was interviewed by the news station, and she said, you know, people look at us and they think that we don't care, that we don't want to read, that we And then she said, you know, I sometimes feel like they think of us as like animals. And I was very pained by what she said, because growing up in the Montbello community, everyone saw themselves and internalized themselves as warriors, as truly a loving, embraced community that support one another. And to hear this child have internalized a different narrative, it brought tears to my eyes. And I said, you know, that's why this library space, Julia Torres is an amazing librarian in that space, and she has shifted how students see themselves. And that is the power of story. The power of story is that you see yourself reflected in all of the majesty of your legacy and your ancestors and your elders and all the powerful things they've done, and you see yourself differently. And I think that truly underscores the power of our libraries.
Yeah. You know, I appreciate you mentioning those warriors. So we grew up in Montbello together.
Yeah.
And so, you know, speaking of some of those pain points that students have even shared with you, we get to this issue around academic achievement.
Yes.
And, you know, aside from, you know, reading being what you've described, what you've outlined for us today, what have you seen in terms of the academic achievement of students who are really focused and committed to reading?
Yeah. Well, we know that one of the major indicators for academic success in reading comprehension and writing is actually how much time you spend outside of the school day reading. And so when students don't have access, plus they do not have someone leaning in to say, this is something that's going to be a powerful transformational shift for you, then we see that students are not picking up those books. So in one study for 5th graders, they found that outside of school reading was only 5%. That is something every one of us can change. Intentionally ensuring that every child's reading that 30 minutes outside the school day at bare minimum. And one of the competing factors, I think people always want to blame the phone, but it's actually, sometimes it's television. You know, it's setting aside time to say, we're going to read together. Also, we stop reading with children way too soon. We should be kind of still reading with them through middle school. I still do. Kimberly Grayson at Martin Luther King Jr. Early College does an Equity Book of the Month, and reading these books with high school students opens up a conversation around equity and access and other conversations around social justice. And those critical questions, they come along with the story. You can unpack it easily with the book. So when we look at students owning and having that access, one of the simplest things that we can do is ensure that they're reading.
Yeah. I know that Kim has some phenomenal things going on out there, and
Yes.
I've witnessed the whole PD, the professional development that you
Yes.
helped to lead out there in a short amount of time around the culturally responsive, just reading books and then having teachers go into classes and read those same books. So we're gonna pause in just a moment for our break. Again, we are talking with Janet Damon, who's from our library services. As you can see yourself, she is a phenomenal person, and her spirit just exudes just love and appreciation and just a real passion for the work that she does. So we're taking a short break, but we will be right back after this break. You're listening to More Than Radio, EDUCA Radio. Don't go away.
Learn what you love what you learn. Graduate debt-free from a certified program in health science, design, trades, or administration in less than a year. Opportunity comes from possibility. Come see what's possible.
So I was a recreation and tourism major at Missouri State University. After college, I moved to Hilton Head, South Carolina, where I did an internship, and it was more in the hospitality realm of things. So I started working in resorts. I worked for 6 resorts in Hilton Head, where I began my hospitality career. So first and foremost, you get to meet a lot of great people. I mean, you get to see people from all walks of life, from all cultures, from all countries, and you do get to know them, you know, on more of a personal level as a concierge, especially because you're helping them plan activities and plan daily to-dos. So you get to know like what their likes are, what their dislikes are. So I think that's, you know, super awesome. I think the 3 main skills and components that I'd like to kind of transition in the hospitality are communication, both verbal and written. I think that's primarily going to be the most important skill that anybody learns in hospitality, is how to communicate with others. So there's everything from, you know, concierge, bellman, valet, front desk agents, catering and sales. And that's just in the hospital or in the hotel industry alone. You know, there's everything in restaurants as well. So bartenders, servers, hostesses, general managers. You know, I think there's just a wide array of positions available. I'm excited about the program, and I think that's the most important thing. I'm truly excited to start it and excited to see how it evolves and rolls out. And, you know, it's going to be a growing process, so we're excited to see, you know, what we can gain from it and what kind of sponsors we can, you know, match up with, what kind of places we can go tour, but I think it provides a lot of opportunity for students and for adult learners alike. I think that it will be a great kind of jumping off point for the hospitality industry and to become a hospitality professional.
Learn what you love what you learn. Graduate debt-free from a certified program in health science, design, trades, or administration in less than a year. Opportunity comes from possibility. Come see what's possible.
And we're back on EDUCA Radio on this Friday before spring break. Again, I can't be happier that it's spring break. I think we all are in a place where we need a little bit of downtime. Would you agree?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that radical self-care that Dr. Ware talks about. So again, we're back with Janet Damon from our library services team. We've been having a rich conversation, and I just want to pick back up on how we ended the last segment. We were talking about some of the work that Kim Grayson does, and just wanted to point out, I know that she has reserved 20, 30 minutes in a staff meeting for some professional development around those books of the month.
Yes.
And having teachers go back in the classrooms and read to their high school students exactly what you talked about. And there's power in that. You want to share more about that?
I do, and I want to share something that I share with all of the staff members when we get started on that PD, is that in research, what we know is that 6 minutes of reading reduces the cortisol in the body by almost 70%. So 6 minutes, that's a healing practice. To prepare ourselves for learning, one thing when we think about Dr. Zaretta Hammond, or actually Zaretta Hammond, she clarified that at our last PD, that she is about the work and she brings so many years of experience that, you know, that is the practical application of a really incredible amount of research that she synthesized. And one of the things that she talks about is how we have to stop the amygdala hijack, which is that stress response that, you know, sometimes microaggressions, you know, there's research to show that one professor had his graduate students collect how many times they experienced a microaggression. And over the course of this 3-month class, it was 1,000. So that the average person of color is experiencing, you know, 300 microaggressions a month. How are we calming ourselves and preparing ourselves for the critical work of learning? And so Kimberly Grayson does an amazing job of setting aside this time, of having an equity team that is phenomenal. There's so many things that I've witnessed in that space, just seeing her staff interact, the kind of love and care they show one another. And so you can just tell that she brings a masterful expertise in education and adult learning. But the other piece is that we need the counter narrative. So there is a narrative that's often negative, that surrounds a lot of different, because we live in a system that has bias and that we deal with racism, that there's a narrative that is supplied. And that narrative is often not the truth. That when we see the counter narrative, the reality, the story brings forth a lived experience, and that opens the opportunity for teachers and students to have those critical conversations that unearth the true experiences of that student. And so one of the books that we do is Alma and How She Got Her Name. And then in that, you know, the little girl says, my name is so long. And her father says, I named you for all of these ancestors who came before you. And these are the characteristics they have. And these are the characteristics I see in you. And then when we look at how names also can have bias associated with that. This was a conversation teachers got to have with students and hear how students felt about some of the ways that teachers would say, oh, I'm not going to call you by your name. Let's just call you this. Or I'm not going to, I don't know how to pronounce that. I feel uncomfortable saying it. So I'll just, you know, put you in seat 1. And when we think about students being able to speak back to our teachers, and to share their personal stories. That is the foundation of relationship. And Zaretta Hammond talks about relationship gets us this entry point into real learning. And participating, DPS did a wonderful job allowing and ensuring access for some educators to participate in that training. And prior to that training, I thought of culturally responsive education as being this lane of, these are the kinds of work we want to ensure, we want to close opportunity gaps. And after hearing her describe really the creation and the paradigm shift, where you are in your mind at the same time thinking of how you are creating a safe space, how you are building relationship, how you are providing cognitive load, how you are aligning this to tools that they could use to help them navigate complex problems on their own. How are you ensuring that you're not giving them learned helplessness? How are you ensuring the rigor is there? And that you are simultaneously doing these things. I realized that I had thought of culturally responsive education as kind of like a move, an instructional move. And after seeing and listening to her, I recognize now that it is like someone saying, I use the color red, and someone saying, I've created the Sistine Chapel, right? It is an orchestra of movements that this teacher is doing in their classroom that is not just one thing, it's how they all get that synergy.
Yeah, and Zaretta, she is very adamant that it's not a checklist.
Not
that you cannot just email me a copy of this list and I go through and check off the boxes. She's very powerful in that. And so speaking of books, good books to read, that's a good one to read.
Yes, and that we have 30 copies available, Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain in Overdrive for Educators.
That's a good book to read. I want to come back to something you just said is so powerful is around names.
Yes.
This is pretty timely right now in DPS. We've always taught, and I always was taught, that my name is all I have, actually. And I remember my grandson's name being just misspelled by one letter. And he said, oh, that's okay. I said, oh, no, that is not okay.
That's right.
This is your name, and you were named this for a reason. Whether somebody else understands it or not, there's a context. There's a family history, a legacy that is connected to that, whatever the name is and however it's spelled. There's a reason for that. And we have to value that. So making sure that our students do not diminish themselves by saying, oh, just call me this for short, or nobody knows how to pronounce it, so just call me this. Nope. Not on my watch. Not on my watch. So I want to give you an opportunity to share with us. You've brought a lot of material. And you have so much, Janet. We probably really could do like a 4-hour show and not get everything in. But before you do that, I just want to again reiterate for our listeners and our viewers about the website and the resources that are there. In particular, earlier in the conversation, you talked about this process that happens when we read right next to our loved, to our loved one. And you said these 3 things happen. I think it was 3. Is that, anywhere, is that documented anywhere, that process, that graphic that we could have access to?
That's a good point. I haven't seen it in a graphic. What I tend to do is collect reading statistics and information and how they have health benefits. And also just how we are able to think about, there's this third piece to it. So we have the oxytocin, the closeness. We also have endorphins from finishing something. So after the storybook is over, we have this moment where we look at each other and we're like, wow, what a journey that was. And then we also have just the connections now happening between new information, existing information, and then this beautiful shared experience. And that we know from brain science, how we gather new information and how we anchor new information is connecting it to prior knowledge, to prior learning. But there also is a science around awe and the power of feeling awe. And so, we see it when we talk about nature going into a space that's beautiful, people experience awe. But also when we read something or see something or an experience or a love that's so beautiful, the book I think of is Ming Lee wrote Drawn Together. And when I read that book aloud, whether it's to adults, whether it's to children, there's this moment where I turn the page and there's this artwork and children do this. I have had a student in 5th grade, I was just at an elementary school doing this presentation, and he was kind of on his Chromebook, and the teacher kind of was like, well, let him be on his Chromebook, 'cause, and I was reading it, and I turned that page, and he stood up, and he came and stood right next to me to look closer at that page. And he was about my height, 5th grader, and then he sat down right at my feet to watch the rest of that book. That is the emotion. We are wired for beauty. And the beautiful stories, the beautiful illustrations is why we should not deny children access once, picture books and so forth, the art. And then that becomes this gateway, right, to being able to create these images in your own mind, reading the poetry of, Audre Lorde, reading the books that Octavia Butler wrote, where you all of a sudden see yourself in Alice Walker's stories. And you hear, when you read James Baldwin, and you feel like someone finally has put into words everything you've been feeling your whole life. I've had that moment. I think that every child deserves that moment. Every adult, we deserve that moment. We deserve that 6 minutes of reading to calm our own systems. So I was at a meeting one time when a colleague of mine pulled out a book out of her purse to show me, and it's The Well-Read Black Girl, and it's a new book. And I said, oh, look at that. And that's a reader's life, a reader's journey in a reading community.
Yeah. Wow. How many books do you read a month? Because you know every author, you know every story. How many do you read?
I read probably a novel a week. I read also books like Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain.
Okay.
Right now I'm reading about abolitionist teaching, but I find so much joy in it. But I probably read 4 to 5 picture books a day.
Nice.
One other book to get is called Woke Baby. That book is beautiful.
Woke Baby.
Yes, Woke Baby.
Janet, I wish we had more time.
Yeah.
I really do. I wish we had more time. We're going to have you come back.
Oh, thank you.
Give us the website one more time. We've only got about 30 seconds.
DPSK12.org. So www.dpsk12.org. In the center green box, you'll see ebooks as well as online databases, which are fun too.
Awesome. Awesome. Again, thank you for our special guest, Janet Damon from Library Services. Also want to thank our superintendent, Susanna Cordova, for supporting this show and all of the EDUCA platforms. Have a great spring break, and remember to tell your kids, I believe in you, and I know you can do it. Go read that book. Have a good summer. Good spring break.
Thank you for tuning in to the #1 educational program in Colorado, More Than Radio, EDUCA Radio. And because you asked for it, you can now find us online at educadps.org and on our new EDUCA Radio app. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and like our page, EDUCA. We thank the following organizations that support the EDUCA platforms: Denver Public Schools, Denver Museum of Nature and Science, Denver Broncos, Risa's Dental and Braces, Emily Griffith Technical College, Cirrus Streaming, Denver Botanic Garden, Colorado Rockies, University of Denver, Open Media Foundation, DPS TV Channel 22, Waterworld, America's Latino Eco Festival, City and County of Denver, Consulate General of Mexico in Denver, FrankClavijo.com, Univision Colorado, and a special thanks to you, our loyal listeners. This has been More Than Radio, EDUCA Radio. Our children's future, our community's future depends on all of us.
Feel better? Being a single parent is hard, it's time consuming.
Somebody left their toy in here.
It's scary.
Fright can often turn into inspiration.
If it weren't for her, this wouldn't be what it is today. I'm gonna make a cake.
That sweet girl inspired her mother into a sweet career.
I'm gonna decorate a cake for Valentine's Day.
Jordan Higgs
Okay.
owns the Cakery by Jordan.
I will just keep on adding red. Home-based businesses are really growing. And just start layering it on here. Started in 2012 when a friend needed a cake.
Her business was learn as you go.
Well, I had been winging it until I started to go to Emily Griffith and really refine my skills. I knew that I wanted to work for myself. So I chose Emily Griffith because I'd heard a lot about their cake decorating and their baking program.
A decision that's paying off.
My skill and my career have just really expanded greatly since then. I've been afforded a lot more opportunities than I would have otherwise if I hadn't started going there, which is something I'm grateful for because now I can call myself a professional.
Those skills create delicious creations.
I get to make pretty things or fun things. I get to add to people's events. I get to create people's wildest dream pieces. I take pride in being able to bring those imaginations in your head to life. Strawberry vanilla cake.
Her success inspired by this little life.
That is beautiful. Delilah Rose, my 4-year-old daughter.
A little girl motivating improvement in her mother.
It was so important for me to be able to still better myself because she's always looking. There's no way to give up when there's 2 little eyes watching you.
How could you not be inspired to overcome challenges when a face like this looks up at you?
I'm very grateful for the hardship.